Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about the 10 things you should do immediately after the lights go out, or the shit hits the fan, or things go south, however you want to interpret it. Thing is, there's some actual action steps that you need to do in the moment. Now, as preppers, we all think that we prepare beforehand and everything should be handled. And if that's the case, I mean, that's the perfect world, right? If you're prepared, you don't have to go anywhere when the lights go out. Everything's handled. Your car's ready to drive you home in whatever scenario, and you have the stuff to get there and whatever. And that's the goal, right? As a prepper, that's where we're always trying to be. But think of this from a novice, and this is for anybody who's not really prepared, or no matter where you are. Maybe you're at your friend's house and this is what you need to do because you're not getting home because it's 3 hours away and this catastrophe is bigger than that, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, this is the full steps of preparation and what you should do. And obviously, if you are a prepper, you should be thinking about, well, what can I pre-stage or store now to make these things not an issue? Right? Where I can just immediately step into the next thing. So I don't know. I think with that, we kind of jump right into it, right? 10 things. I think the first thing is to secure your family or your loved ones, right? The people, anybody that's part of your survival plan, you need to make sure that they have a way to get safe and get everybody home, to take care of them. That might be your kids at school. Might need to be picked up. Maybe it was an EMP and the cars don't work and your wife is 7, 5, 20 miles away and you have to find a way to get her home. These are all realistic things that you want to consider and have a plan for. Now, maybe you have something cool like EMP shield and it was an EMP and whatever. Maybe it was like Red Dawn and we just see parachutes of, in this case, maybe it'll be Chinese people coming out of the sky, right? Who knows? Mm-hmm. They're all coming out of that big balloon and, just piling out, they're just streaming as it drifts across America,
Like some sort of messed up clown car.
But the thing is, the first thing you want to do is to make sure everybody's safe and has a way to get home. And obviously we've talked about some of the better ways is to talk to your kids. Hey, if the lights go out, you need to leave the school and just start walking home, or don't leave the school. I'm going to come get you. Know that I'm going to be waiting for you right here. If that doesn't work, plan B is I'm coming to the school itself and talking to the principal and getting you out, whatever it is, right? It's to come up with a plan so nobody is worried about what the other guy's going to do.
Right. We all kind of know what everybody else is doing, where they're at, and what they're going to do to get home. One thing that I want to mention is it doesn't come up a lot, but, they talk about EMPs and your car shutting down. And it's kind of common sense, but there's a good chance that if your car stalls out and all the power goes out, you can start your car again, shift it into park, and it's possible it'll start right back up.
It's worth a try. But I think that's kind of your go-to, right? Is to
Right. I think most
I
people
don't think
like,
in your mind you're like, oh, it's an EMP. In your
right.
mind, it's like, what the hell? My car just shut off.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But yeah, no, definitely give it a try and see where you're at, or see if anybody has a running vehicle and you know what you can do. Because I think initially when it would happen, people aren't like, oh, we're all on our own. Like at
Mhm.
first you were like, oh, look, we're all stuck here. And, you know, I think it's in people's nature to help each other. I mean, maybe I'm thinking
Right.
of like North Carolina, not New York.
Mhm.
Like in New York, it's like, who are you? Why are you talking to me? I'll kill you, you know? Who knows? All right. So number 2 on my list here is fill every water container, water buckets, washer, anything you can do with water and
Mhm.
build a backup, because that municipal water is going to eventually run out if it's such a catastrophe that's going to go on.
Yeah,
Right.
and most places in the United States have water towers, meaning that all the pumps, everything out, nothing working, there's still going to be water that will gravity feed through your faucet for a certain amount of time until that's out.
And you want to be able to take care of your family. That's a step number 2 in my book. I mean, I don't know. The next thing is maybe run out and get any supplies you don't have. Now, like I said, obviously as a prepper, we would like to have had all these supplies and not have to be fighting the gas line at the gas station up the street, and I'm assuming not an EMP, something else happens. Right. And I don't want to be fighting, maybe the stock market and the dollar collapse to zero. Right. But you still, all of a sudden prices are going to start going up or whatever, you're saying, well, Chuck, you just said that they're going to zero. Well, yeah, then they're going to go up. But you want to secure the resources that you can.
Yeah. Now, what good way to do this is to just go down to the grocery store, and when you see somebody coming out with a full cart, stick them up and rob their stuff. And I'm saying that as a joke because there's potential that somebody will do that to you.
That's absolutely potential.
So you need to be aware if people are scrambling for the last little bit of supplies and you have them. You're in a dangerous situation and you need to be able to protect yourself.
Absolutely. So that's, and so what type of supplies? So obviously fuel is a big thing, right?
Right. That's the number one thing.
Having diesel for my tractor is like such a huge part of my long-term survival plan. I'm always worried about not having enough, and you hate to store it in the cold winter and whatever. So it's always a ongoing battle for me of what do I do, as far as that. But yeah, so getting gas and diesel, big thing. And lines are only going to get worse in that initial stages because then places are going to start running out. So that's step 1. Next is food and groceries, right? You got to feed your family. Now, obviously, what kind of food would you want? Well, these are the things we always talk about as preppers, is things that are going to feed a lot of bellies for low dollars. So we're talking about rice, we're talking about beans. But it turns out when people are taking everything off the shelf before a hurricane, it's everything, right? Is it milk and bread? I know when COVID hit, bread was one of the hardest things to get. It was like really weird at first, where it's like, oh, we can't get any bread for anything.
And if you go to the grocery store and you're hitting up the dried beans and rice and it's all empty, check the pasta and that'll be empty too.
Right. And then the red, canned sauces, then, your soups, you keep moving down the line of stuff that's going to fill bellies and stuff that's going to last. Now, obviously you can buy some fresh food if you didn't have any in your fridge. And if you have power to keep that cool, or keep it outside. And obviously stuff that you're going to eat today or tomorrow, who knows? You might be able to do something with that. Maybe even meat that you can smoke. I really doubt that the grocery store is going to be empty, but there's going to be a bunch of steaks sitting there. Now, maybe the $20 steaks, they might be there.
And what else will be there is low quality meat. Like people buy out chicken breast. You know what I mean? Leave the chicken thighs next, alone there.
You know what I'm always, go
after
ahead.
The big push with COVID, one of the things that was not empty was the lamb. You know, I don't know why people don't like lamb chops. They're a little bit more expensive, but if you know, if you're in an emergency and you need some meat, that's a good, you know, a good thing that for whatever reason people aren't into.
Yeah. It's funny in the South here. It's really big that people don't eat the chicken thighs. And I'm always like, that's my
Really?
like go-to. It's
Yeah.
like, I like the dart. It's tasty. It's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, we give that to the dogs. We don't, the thighs are nothing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's weird. To me, that's like the exact opposite.
Yeah. You also find a lot of like ham hocks, pig knuckles, things like that. And yeah, it's gross. And maybe you get it for your dogs, but you know, you can also just put it in a pot and fry it with your whatever vegetables you have, and you know, get some of that grease, get some of that protein in there.
Exactly. Now, the other thing that people forget in the panicked emergency of the apocalypse is things like toilet paper, soap, feminine products, you know, toothpaste, deodorant. You know, these things are going to matter. Laundry soap, dish soap. All these things are useful, but to me, food is going to outweigh, and you're going to keep going down that line. You know, obviously we talk about the things that, you know, preppers need to stockpile, having a quality first aid kit, having, you know, these, they tend to go down in priority, right? If you only have so many dollars of cash that you can spend, you're going to want to, you know, prioritize, and food is going to be number one, you know, because we already talked about water, right? If you had no way the water shut off instantly out of your tap, then yeah, buying bottled water would be cool too, you know, but hopefully we're not paying for that. Canned meat, tuna, chicken, ham, beef, you know, any of that stuff is awesome.
Well, we're talking about soap. I would recommend that everybody, you can get bar soap very cheap, especially if you're buying in bulk. And I know everyone's like, oh, but it dries out my skin, or, you know, I use the special scented body wash and stuff like that. Soap is soap, and bar soap is cheap, and you can use it a lot longer than like liquid soaps, or, you know, and you can use it for almost everything. You know, maybe your wife won't want to wash her hair with it, but I mean, I've got a beard and I only wash it in fresh mountain springs with bar soap. I mean, that's just standard.
But with bar soap, okay.
Yep.
You do you, Kevin. That's all I can say. But that's the thing. Another step that you'd want to take, you know, if you can use it, credit cards are the way to go in the beginning, right? In that emergency, and then resort to your cash.
Yeah.
I would say when it came to getting supplies, one of those supplies is hitting an ATM and getting as much cash out as possible.
Right. Most ATMs will limit you to $400 a bank if they're up and running and able to work.
To about 800 now, Kevin.
I recently tried to max mine out. I don't know. I mean, everybody's different. I'm sure every bank is different.
Yeah, I just know that $400 doesn't go as far as it used to. So
it doesn't
now
do much.
Are like, oh, we'll give you a little bit more.
Yeah, that's 2 tanks of gas in a bottle in.
That would be a big thing as part of getting supplies, is get any cash immediately. And maybe you can't. You know, obviously, you know, you're going to hit no's on some of these. Like, oh, gee, EMP, nobody's getting gas out of any gas station. Okay, sorry, you missed that one. You're going to have to skip to step, 5, right? But that's the thing. These are
also it would be worthwhile to pay attention during any kind of power outage, which gas stations are still up and running. I know we had a big hurricane here and the power was out. This is about 15 years ago. Power was out and most gas stations were just closed. But certain ones, a certain chain had generators.
Exactly. And it was by chain. That's what I noticed, because obviously they run their business the same way, right? In a chain. One of the big things with Helene in Western North Carolina here, it was, hey, go to an Ingalls. If you can find an Ingalls, 1, they're pretty well stocked on gas, and 2, they have generators to keep it going. And I don't know if it was generators, but they were always the ones with power, however they work that out with magic. I don't know, but they were the way to go in the South here. And, that's what you do. Somebody mentioned, restaurant supplies, grocery stores, bulk food places. Another thing, like after things like say EMP and the grocery stores are all closed, there are other places that have cafeterias. Anywhere that has a cafeteria, you might want to think, hey, they probably have bulk food, and maybe you can broker a deal, is how I will say that. I'm not saying go rob places. I'm saying maybe you could talk to somebody. I know schools have big cafeterias and buy food in bulk. That's something to consider.
Yeah.
Like I said, anywhere with a cafeteria that does that kind of service, they might have the 50-pound bags of flour and that kind of stuff. So something to keep in mind. Next, I would say, once you've gone out, you've done everything you can do out there, maybe take a quick inventory. I mean, I would not say I would waste a lot of time, like actually writing down, I have 27 cans of tuna and I have whatever. I wouldn't do an inventory like that, but I would go through what supplies I have. Are my gas cans that I thought full? Are they full? Look, I have 10 gallons of gas over here. I have that car, sitting there with a full tank that I can siphon out and do whatever. Things like that. Do I have that water filter? Is the equipment that I thought I had, going to work? Is it together? Take an inventory of what you have. What do I see in my pantry or in my fridge?
Yeah. And if you're ever, in this sort of situation and you're wondering if that, gallon of gas that you have mixed with oil for your chainsaw and your weed whacker will work on other stuff, it will. It'll just run like, it'll run terrible and it'll smoke. But, if you need to use that to get 10 miles down the road in your car, it probably won't do much damage to it.
Right. And it will do a lot better mixing in with the 10 gallons in your tank than with the 0 gallons in your tank. Just another thought. But on the flip side, having a chainsaw, pretty cool. And Kevin, come on, you want to be out with the weed whacker in the apocalypse.
You got to edge things up, man. That's the only way to make it look nice.
You're not going to have the best looking yard in the apocalypse if you don't keep that weed whacker going. So,
right.
But no, absolutely, a chainsaw can be a game changer. And how far a gallon of gas, like honestly, I pretty much use I mix a gallon pretty much once a year. I mix 1 gallon with, a mixed fuel.
And it's enough.
And that usually lasts me the whole year of my chainsaw use. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to heat my house with firewood and using just a gallon of, stuff. But normal maintenance on my property, I'm probably using about a gallon a year. So that's something to realize that it does go a long way. That's all I'm saying with that. So inventory your supplies, that's huge. Next step, I would say it's time to get any intel. Now, obviously, some of these overlap and maybe the priority changes. I just know grocery store shelves are disappearing pretty quickly. So getting out there matters. But get intel. So maybe while you're going to the grocery store, can you be listening to the radio and hearing what's going on and how much of the country is affected, or, what are the threats? Is there a big
fire? I know you have your favorite Metallica CD in the CD player. I fully support that, but maybe it's time to just switch to the radio. AM and FM too, AM might reach further and you might be getting a bad signal, but you might be able to get more information if, the FM stations around you are out.
So gathering intel is huge. And maybe that's talking to the fire department. Maybe that's you see a policeman. He might know something. Anybody around, like I said, radios, CNN. One of the big things I've always tried to cover is have a antenna for your TV. If you have those rabbit ears, that might get you a little more when other things go out. I'd hate to imagine the world where the internet goes out. We'd all shut down and cry. But, I don't even know if the TV stations can broadcast without the internet. If that wouldn't corrupt their whole operation. We're so dependent. But
do you even use the internet anymore now that the porn's gone? Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
You don't have internet porn down there, right?
Yeah, no, in North Carolina, they do not. So it turns out they do, but you have to give up your driver's license and whatever. And it's like ID me for that. So yeah, that's a crazy world. But anyway, moving right along.
What I do whenever there's, something going on and I can't get any solid information, that nosy bitch up the street, Melissa.
Karen? Melissa.
I mean, it's a Karen, but she's got the police scanner. Her kid's a volunteer firefighter. They're always like poking in everybody's business. That's the type of person that
Judy.
you might want to talk to.
Judy. Okay.
Judy, you knew it, Judy. Yep.
I know it, Judy. Okay. But the next thing is to talk to your neighbors. And here's one of the things. We tend to isolate ourselves and so much kind of I'm on my own and whatever. And then everybody becomes a threat. But if you can kind of set that tone, hey, we're all in this. Hey, if you guys store water, you won't be knocking on my door asking for water. If we all fill our sinks, have your neighbors start to do these same steps. Talk to them about how important it is. And again, maybe you're pulling out of your driveway to run down to the store and get some food, and you see your neighbor standing there. Be like, hey, you know what? This is what I'm doing. You should go too. Or we could go together and have a little security, that kind of thing. So don't be afraid to get these out of order if, the opportunity applies. But you need to work with your neighbors and start to talk to them. 1, about a long-term security plan. 2, to gather intel. But 3, how you guys might be able to work together to help each other out. Now, I'm not talking about communal living and we all put our food supply in a big pile and whatever, but maybe it comes to that. Maybe you do some kind of community meal because somebody's got, you remember that stone soup story from when you're a kid and how, hey, we all have a little something to bring. I'll bring the carrots and you bring the potatoes and we'll make something wonderful. That's great. But the idea is find a way that you can work together. And that's going to help you. The next is check on your security. Now, I like to imagine a world where everybody has a concealed carry and works in that kind of world, and that's on your person all the time. Like odds are, if I'm somebody who has a handgun and I can legally carry a handgun, there's no chance that I'm like, oh, shit's getting real. I need to go to the grocery store that I'm not bringing that handgun.
Right.
Now, for me, that's not even a change of how I would go to the grocery store anyway, but for other people, it might be. And today would be that day to bring your gun.
Yeah, and there's certain days where it's depending on what type of socialist state you live in, it might even be against the law still. But, today's the day. Today's the day to break the law.
Right. So you may want to consider that. Kevin would never tell you to break the law because that would be wrong. And we all follow all the rules all the time. But, like in a movie, that would be something the hero would do.
Right.
Is take the gun anyway. Like
be a hero.
Right. So, and then, like I said, at this point in the game here, I'm checking all my guns here? What kind of ammo situation do I have? And maybe you have that inventory in your mind. And maybe you have a prepper pantry that the inventory of what's there. That you went over there and there's 24 rolls of toilet paper and 30 rolls of paper towel. And, you might know that and you could skip that step. Good on you, right? That's awesome. But if you're not prepared for that, that's something you need to do and you need to go and check out. So think of it like that. Next, establish communications. And this is going to be kind of integrated with your neighbors. Now, I actually purchased and put in some kind of EMP proof container, a bunch of those like Motorola talk about kind of things, radios that I can set up communications. Because to me, communications are like a force multiplier, right? If I can have somebody at a checkpoint 200 yards up the road and they don't have to be ringing a bell for everybody or come running a mile to come get me, that's pretty cool. If they can just be like, hey, there's somebody coming up. Can you give me some backup here? Setting up that, but maybe it's just, hey, if you guys see anything or have anything, we're happy to have your back. You have my back, and just, let's alert each other by blowing this whistle, or, if you hear me shoot 3 gunshots, or if you hear, whatever, you come up with a plan and some kind of way to work together. It might be some tin cans and string. I've heard that's a thing that you could do back and forth. You never see that broken out in the prepper plans anymore, the tin cans and string.
No,
they never go to that. There actually were the old school radios where they would run a wire back and forth and you could do it without electricity. But anyway, there are ways to set up communications. Better if you thought about it beforehand, but you can still do things after the fact. So that's something to consider. Next, you need to come up with a long-term plan for your food and water. All right. So, all right, we have all these supplies. We have a basic inventory. We know what we're dealing with. Now, what are we going to do?
Yeah. And you don't want to find yourself in that situation where you have peanut butter and no jelly. You don't want to be, you don't want to be the guy that has rum and no Coke, You want to be able to make sure that nobody wants to eat plain pasta with nothing on it. You can, but you kind of want to plan your preps along those lines, that it's standalone food, or you have the matchup for everything.
Right. Another thing, so as you're setting up your long-term plan, maybe it's, I'm getting some of this from the notes here, but maybe it's going and getting car batteries from cars that died on the side of the road, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you live next to, a big thing and there's 20 batteries sitting out there. Those are going to matter, right? There's fuel in tanks that are cars that are, hit by an EMP, that there's going to be a lot of gas to go around and very little things to run them. Gas usually has a shelf life of about 6 months. I'd say it gets questionable after 6 months. You could probably run it for about a year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we know about stable and things like that, and things that can buy you more time. That's something to consider. Believe it or not, mixed fuel, like Kevin was talking about from your gas thing, actually lasts longer.
Right.
And will hold better. You can also up it with alcohol, mixing it that way. That kind of thing will freshen it up. Replace my peanut butter and jelly with meat and cheese, Kevin.
Yeah, I like it.
That's the world you want to live in. Mm-hmm. No, actually, I'm a meat kind of guy. Who knows? So next, we have a plan. Now, also, do we have a well? Do we know where there's a well? Do we know where we can get water? Can we secure access to that well and water? Maybe it's not on my property. Maybe it's 3 houses up, and maybe we can broker a deal with them. Hey, I know how to get that water out of your well. Let's work together and share it, or, whatever. You come up with the plan. And honestly, you guys know as long-term preppers that you should be thinking of these plans beforehand and buy the couple of things you need to buy, to get you there. Everybody has their vision of those pitcher pumps, but a lot of them are 25 feet down, or it's not getting water. Right. And it turns out a lot of wells are deeper than 25 feet, but something to kick around. Also, so like I said, gas, fuel, batteries, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things available to you. Maybe you have access to a creek, but is that creek going to still be clean? We've talked about gypsy wells. Even if you set up where you dug a hole next to your creek and the water filtered in so you could control it a little bit, and then you treated that water. You boiled it, you filtered it, you did whatever. That would be pretty cool.
The situation with any drinking water is filter first, then disinfect. Right. And you can disinfect, I think it's 6 drops per gallon of water. If you have to filter it through a t-shirt or something, it's better than nothing, Get the little bits of dirt and leaves out.
And
it's nothing.
And so chlorine obviously would be one of the things to add to your list of things to grab when you're out at the store before.
And bleach and chlorine, they do have a shelf life. It's not really something you want to store long-term storage. Yes. But it is something that you can get off the shelf at the store and save it. If you are in this situation and you get the bleach, you want to keep it in a cool, dark place. Yeah, absolutely. Sunlight will degrade it and heat will degrade it. So
Yeah, think about that. What I did and my plan for bleach is I actually bought the Sam's Club or something had like concentrated bleach that's like 30-1 or something.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I bought a 6 of that and I threw it in a cold, dark place and I
Mhm.
leave it there. And you know what? In 5 years, I'm assuming it's going to be at least as strong as regular bleach
Right.
and probably better, but we'll see. And, all I can do is take the steps I can do. That's the thing. Airtight is a big thing with the bleach. It will evaporate very quickly, chlorine.
Mhm.
So, because chlorine at room temperature, we looked this up the other day. Chlorine at room temperature is actually a gas. So I'm not really sure. I tried to figure out how it's a
Yeah.
liquid when
It's
I
a
get
different, yeah, it's a different chemical makeup. It's
Right.
Chlorine is actually hypochlorite is the liquid form. And
Gotcha.
it's somewhat stable, but like you said, it evaporates quickly.
It evaporates quickly. So something to keep in mind. Step number 9 is where I'm at on my list here. And number 9 is expand your security. All right. So you talk to you and your 2 neighbors right next to you. I don't know. My houses are pretty far apart. Like
Mhm.
in a town like Kevin, it might be secure in his cul-de-sac, right?
Right.
He could secure his little street of 8 houses.
Mhm.
Now you might want to, hey, can we talk to the street on either side of us? Because if they were overrun, that could be really bad for me.
Right.
If they're on my side and looking out for me, then I know I'm not going to be attacked from my backyard. And
Mhm.
they know they're not going to be attacked from their backyard. That's something you might want to consider and work together for. So I'm just saying, another thing with the chlorine, back to that, is they have for like pools and stuff, they have the solid blocks that look like the pucks that you put in the urinals.
Mhm.
They have like that. Those
Those are pretty expensive, but they are shelf stable and you can
they
store them
are,
for a long
and
time.
right, that might be part of your plan. And then again, you have to find a way to figure out your dosage. But basically, if you put it in, it's like smells chlorine, and then 2 days later it doesn't smell chlorine, you're probably going to be okay. I mean, that's your
Mhm.
general rule, right? You want to go
Right.
that way. But as you saw, Kevin was saying drops to a gallon.
Right. Right. You don't want to burn out your
It's
insides.
small. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The dead milkmen used to talk about drinking bleach. It's not really a good plan,
Yeah.
turns out. All right. Last thing I have, number 10 on my list, and this is a big one, is start to think about transportation. Now, maybe you had an EMP and it's only those old vehicles that we need to find, right? So
Mhm.
that might be the answer. Maybe it's not an EMP. Everybody's got their car, but nobody has electricity and those gas pumps aren't running. Do we have a way to get the gas out of the ground? That's something to consider.
Now, I hear, I don't know how true this is, and it might be outdated information, but I hear that gas pumps have a mechanical pump, if you open them up inside. I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how accurate that is now, but I
have
know
not
10 or
seen
15
that,
years
but,
ago.
I could talk to my wife. She used to run those kind of places.
Mhm.
I am not pretty confident on that, but it's possible.
Also, it is very inexpensive to get a
For
fuel
you to get.
siphon.
Yes, for you to figure it out. Turns out you can do it. Turns out there's other things besides cars. Bicycles, dirt bikes, four-wheelers, these kind of things, they matter. But bicycles, they don't use any gas. Turns out horses, big thing. Maybe it's dog sleds, whatever. There are different things you can do.
Right.
Well, it depends on your world, right, Kevin? Maybe you're cross-country skiing it, all right? I don't know. You do you. That's what I say. But those are my 10 like immediate steps of, hey, the world's ending. I need to do something now. Now, obviously, we could do a lot of steps right now to make it that it's not urgent for me to run to the store.
Right.
But is it ever not a good time to go get more gas if you know there's going to be no more ever?
Right.
Because I
Right.
keep
If you have a hurricane or a storm coming towards you and you don't fill up your gas tank ahead of time, that's kind of on you. That's something that you should do every time. Watch the weather. You know what I mean? Just pay attention. If there's something coming, make sure everything's topped off and you've got some extra fuel in a, a tank. When you go to the gas station, and you'll see they have those, 2-gallon gas cans on the shelf. They charge, through the roof for those because they know you have to buy that to get the gas back to the car that ran out of fuel.
Absolutely.
Plan ahead and buy those at a place where,
they're cheap.
When they're cheap.
And cheap's relative. But honestly, I just bought a new 5-gallon gas can probably like 6 months ago. Now, I normally had been rotating through 2. Now, I have several vehicles that I keep very topped off all the time, so I always have gas to kind of go to. But I was rotating through 2, and, I was like, you know what? Let me up that to 3. But I also have, like, diesel stores a lot longer than gas does.
Right.
So I actually keep 4 5-gallon tanks of diesel or cans, whatever. And I rotate through those because that's about all I feel comfortable with how old my gas is getting, And I always try and fill them in the summertime, but I don't want to have them empty all through the winter and, get stuck. But just because you end up getting a little like gelling if it's really cold with the diesel, and it'll start to deteriorate a little quicker. Winter is when it's going to get questionable on the diesel, but you do what you can do, right? You just do the best you can.
Yeah. One of the things that I store up, and maybe I have a problem with this, but is propane. And I have a lot of stuff that runs on propane heaters, grill, a few different items that will run off the propane tank, cook stoves, different things. And, you have to kind of, it's probably a good idea to kind of streamline the stuff that you have. Some people have a gas truck and or a diesel truck and a gas car, and that's fine. But you kind of want to streamline your stuff. If all your heat runs on kerosene, that's great. You can swap that out with diesel if you have to. But you kind of want to streamline, so you're looking at one type of thing. Propane is one of those things that will hold up for a long time when it's in a tank. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Transfer tanks on the vehicles. You could work out all different ways. Trailers. I know people now. Again, I live in the South, and people are a lot more lax on their rules. I know that you'd like be shot and go to jail if you were in New York doing this. But I know people who like put a 55-gallon drum on the back of their truck on a pallet and go to the gas station and fill that up and go home and take a tractor and put it, up on a stand and let it gravity feed out of there with a hose. I know tons of people who do that. And I see that all the time at the gas station. Now, I know in New York that people would be like shooting me if I did that when I lived there. So they, what? Yeah. You can't approve the container. No.
Yeah. That is something like I have seen it and it's hilarious until somebody lights themselves on fire. But people will bring all sorts of containers that aren't appropriate for fuel. You can put fuel in a garbage can and it'll stay in there for like 2 or 3 minutes.
A water jug? Yeah,
you can put it in a Rubbermaid bin and it will take 5 or 10 minutes to eat through that Rubbermaid bin, and then it's all inside your car because you thought you were clever. You have to use the right containers for that stuff. A plastic bag, a plastic container, it's not going to hold that fuel like you think it is.
But anyway, bottom line is all this, it sounds scary and terrifying to go out and get these things. It's nice to have them in the back of your mind, what you need to do when an emergency comes up, but also hopefully it inspired you to, I should cover these things now. I should make sure that my pantry is ready to go. There's a lot of crazy things going on in the world. It turns out those drones over New Jersey, they're still there. Actually, it's just watching some stuff. People are like, why are we not talking about it? And they're like, yeah, it's old news, whatever. It's just
old news. Yeah. No, it's still happening.
Did we get to the bottom of it? No.
Nope.
We don't have any idea what's going on.
We just started ignoring it. 24 hours. That's the news cycle. And that's it.
It's like,
now we're on the wildfires.
That lasted like 2 weeks, but now it's wildfires in California.
I was up all night crying last night because Mel Gibson's multi-million-dollar home burned down in Malibu.
Kevin, so sad.
Woo! I don't know what I'm beside myself.
John Goodman too.
That's
yeah. John Goodman. Somebody was like celebrities' homes who've been destroyed by the hurricane. I'm like, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of thing. The world, we just keep moving. Somebody mentioned in general, you want to stockpile cheap alcohol. I actually do that. There's this where I am, they sell Aristocrat.
Oh yeah, the charcoal filtered. That's how you know it's quality.
Aristocrat. And that, I gotta say, I can drink that whiskey. I'm all right with it. And when you're buying it for $6 a bottle, I'm okay. I'm like, I'm good for the apocalypse. Because every time I buy something I want to drink, I buy like 2 Aristocrats to throw in there. And I'm like, good. And you know what? I gotta say, it's even to cover the downside when I'm an old man. I'm like, what if shit gets real and everything goes bad and I can't drink whiskey anymore?
Yeah.
And I'm like, at least I have the Aristocrat.
Yeah, at some point you just want to give up on life. You know what I mean? Things get so bad. You got plenty of food, but you don't have any whiskey left. Oh,
right. That world's not going to happen to me. I may have to sip it slow, but you know, the internet may go out. Yeah.
When I lived in Florida, they had to stop selling rubbing alcohol in the convenience stores because all the homeless people were dying from alcohol poisoning. Don't drink rubbing alcohol. Not a good move.
Secret of the pros right there. So
yeah.
All right. That's what I got. So with that, I would say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.